While dogs are increasingly popular these days, their presence in apartment buildings poses significant issues that warrant serious consideration. For starters, their presence leads to increased noise levels. Dogs frequently bark, which disrupts the peace and quiet that residents expect in multi-unit living environments. This constant disturbance not only affects individual tenants, but also contributes to a general atmosphere of discomfort within any community. In my own experience, I have had to complain and really stay on top of management and other authorities to ensure necessary steps are taken, because dog owners tend to not care about how often their dogs bark and disturb others. Furthermore, dogs can pose serious health and safety risks, particularly in high-density housing where encounters between dogs and tenants can lead to otherwise totally avoidable injuries. To be clear, these are injuries sustained in unprovoked attacks by people's dogs. Some will say that training would resolve this issue, but there is no evidence that it always does. And more importantly, it doesn't seem as if people are training their dogs like they should be, regardless. Then, there is the problem of dogs in elevators, hallways, and other restrictive spaces, such as sidewalks. Dogs are unpredictable, notoriously hyper-aggressive, and intrusive. To further complicate matters, many owners these days seem to not believe in restraining their dogs in public for the safety of others. In other words, loose and free-roaming dogs are always a concern when a landlord adopts a liberal policy with regard to dog ownership, which is to say, if they allow them on their properties at all, especially when it seems everyone and their mother is somehow being conned into dog ownership, as is very much the case today, unfortunately. While a case can be made against dogs in apartments, they really shouldn't be allowed in apartments with elevators or hallways where tenants are forced to be very close to people's dogs, where they can easily reach others, even within the confines of their leashes. And it doesn't help that so many leashes are ridiculously long, like those retractable leashes that seem to be very common these days. This trend makes dogs just as problematic in common areas outside as well, and outside of apartment complexes, on tracks, fields, parks, and various other public locations. Many apartments don't even have size and breed restrictions, or many limits on the amount of dogs that can be owned. And if they do, they don't seem to be seriously enforced. And unfortunately, because of an overly permissive and unquestioning attitude towards people who claim they have service dogs, and because of certain laws that favor dog owners, it is now impossible to live in an entirely dog-free apartment because there are always exceptions for these dogs and no real proofing system for their owners. Dogs require outdoor space for exercise and waste elimination. Apartment buildings lack adequate facilities for these needs, leading to unsanitary and dangerous conditions. It's not just that owners may resort to inappropriate disposal methods on shared property, in terms of the law, because this would mean they don't pick it up, which is very bad, of course. And I am going to be blunt here. The problem is that dogs are shitting and pissing in the grass and soil that is all around us. If people use the bathroom where dogs do, everyone would immediately see the problem with this. It would not do to simply pick up the solid waste and still allow people to defecate and urinate in common areas. This not only diminishes the quality of life for all residents, but also raises health concerns related to hygiene and odor. But that is not all. Dogs can significantly damage apartments, particularly if they are especially neurotic, as some breeds and individual dogs are, or if their owners completely neglect them and leave them to their own devices for hours on end. Although I have read reports of dogs that get plenty of stimulation that still do a significant amount of damage to a property within just 20 or 30 minutes. The worst part about all of this is that there are no alternatives. Exceptions or alternatives to apartments that allow pets are increasingly rare these days. I recently tried to search on several different engines for dog or pet-free apartments, and it is virtually non-existent. The only rare exceptions I have found are things like this.
Here's how I found a truly all-pet-free apartment. When I was looking, I stumbled upon a loft-style apartment building. Because the building is considered a historical building, they have different rules, and no pets, no exceptions is one of them. Has to do with preserving the integrity of the building, original wood floors, beams, etc. Maybe something for you to try and find. I got lucky, but I'm sure there is more out there.
But obviously, not everyone can find a place like this. Or perhaps a housing cooperative where all the tenants agree to live in a completely dog-free building, which would entail excluding all dogs, period, including service dogs. And that is the only other alternative I personally can come up with, besides an intentional community with a similar aim, which is not feasible or desirable for many people, probably most, for very obvious reasons. Aside from that, you could luck out and find a small apartment where the landlord will not rent to anyone who owns a dog. But again, this is hard to come by and not widely available.